Hello everyone, I'm Randy Arrington and welcome to the 36th episode of Page Valley Living. We're here today at the home of Luray Councilman Jason Pettit to talk about his second bid for a 4-year term on the Luray Council. There will be 5 candidates on the November ballot vying for 3 open seats. And we do want to remind voters that in that election you can cast 3 ballots for councilmen. We will continue, as we have been, interviewing other candidates for contested races here in the Page Valley in late August and in early September. And in mid-September, we're going to be holding 2 debates, one among the 5 council candidates and the other between the 2 candidates running for mayor of Luray. Early voting does get underway on Friday, September the 20th. So we continue our election coverage here in 2024 this week in conversation with Luray Councilman Jason Pettit. But before that, let's take a quick look at this week's headlines. And now looking back at the week that was in the Page Valley. Last Thursday night, the Page County School Board had a lot to celebrate as every school but one was fully accredited heading into this school year. 3 schools were not fully accredited heading into last year. Chronic absenteeism has been greatly reduced over the past year. Standardized test scores are on the rise, and the division is now ranked 60th among 132 school systems in the state of Virginia after being ranked 94th just 2 years ago. Classes began on Monday with an estimated enrollment of 2,851 students. On September 9th, the Town of Luray will hold a public hearing to get feedback on amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding lodging houses, including its definition, what zoning districts it will be allowed in as a special use by permit, what requirements those permits may include, and certain restrictions on a property used as a lodging house. The Luray Council's meeting starts at 7 p.m. and those who wish to speak at the public hearing are asked to sign up prior to the start of the meeting. For specifics on that public hearing and the changes to the zoning on lodging houses, you can see the public notice listed on Page Valley News. In the world of sports, at Page County High School, they've named Ryan Powell as its new athletic director. Powell has experience coaching basketball, soccer, and track, and extensive leadership experience, having served as an assistant principal intern in Rockingham County and also an assistant athletic director for several years. Most recently, Powell has been teaching economics and personal finance at Spotswood High School, while he's also served as assistant athletic director. And now looking at the weekend ahead in the Page Valley, picking at the post, it's bluegrass all weekend at the Luray VFW Post 622, just off Route 211 east of Luray. Day and weekend passes are available. Friday, August the 30th, from 7 to 9 p.m., the Town of Luray hosts its Evenings on Main concert series downtown, with the band Kashmir taking the stage at Ruffner Plaza. On Saturday, August 31st, from 9 to 12, it's the Daughter of the Stars Farmers Market in Luray at 56 East Main Street. From 3 to 6 p.m., it's a barbecue cook-off at Castle Vineyards out in the Springfield area, just off Route 340 on Mims Road. The tickets are $20 each, and proceeds benefit Habitat for Humanity. The 5th annual Page Valley Sunflower Festival is this weekend at Ralph Dean Park on Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Entry is $5 per car. And at 7 p.m. Saturday evening and again on 3 p.m. Sunday afternoon, there's a 45-minute recital at the Luray Singing Tower just across from Luray Caverns. And finally, on Sunday, September the 1st, from 6 to 8 p.m., the Town of Shenandoah hosts its Music in the Park series at Big Jim Park, with the Backyard Band providing country and southern gospel selections. And that's the headlines for the past week in the Page Valley. Episode 36 of Page Valley Living is being recorded on Monday, August the 26th, and will air on Wednesday, August the 28th. And we're back here in the home of Luray Councilman Jason Pettit to talk about his second bid for Town Council. Jason, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
We like to use this time and these interviews for candidates in office to let folks know a little bit about them. Now, I would find it very hard to think that there's very many people out there that don't know just about everything about you, but go ahead and tell the folks that may not know, that moved in just yesterday, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Grown up here pretty much my whole life, and when I say pretty much, my dad was a manager at A&P stores and was at the Luray store for a number of years. They opened up a new store in Charlottesville. He was moved to that to open that new store. And I was born while he was operating the store in Charlottesville, managing that. And then the new A&P got built in the East Luray Shopping Center in 1966. And I was 10 months old when my mom and dad moved back here, which they, of course, were both from Luray as well. So from 10 months old on, I've been here and love this town. And went to school here, of course, Luray High School. And after graduated from high school, went into a career with law enforcement, and that's what I retired from a number of years later.
And, you know, I think I remember from some of my old Today in Histories, didn't that A&P close down in the 80s?
That sounds
or
right.
early, or about 90, maybe about 90?
Well, it was in the 80s.
It was in the 80s?
Yeah, my...
86?
Well, let me back up. It might have been early 90s. I know my dad had left from the A&P and went to work with the First National Bank.
Okay.
He accepted a position there. So, but the store operated for a few years after my father had left from there.
Right.
Before the A&P closed down.
And after you retired from law enforcement and left the sheriff's office, you ran a little business downtown.
Yes. After a law enforcement career and retiring, I'd always wanted to, and don't ask me why, it's crazy, I always wanted a restaurant or a little food type of place, and never worked in food in my life, not even at McDonald's or something as a teenager. But so yes, we did a major renovation of that little building that used to be Joe Sid's little shoe shop a number of years. That's what a lot of people remember.
Wasn't it also the original real house of the fire department?
It was. It was originally built around 1901 as the East Luray Real House. There was two of them. There was one on the west side of town too, near the courthouse. But yeah, that's the history of that little building. But anyway, we opened that up, so operated that for about 7 years, and made a switch meanwhile there from a sort of a burger and hot dog type of joint. Switched over to more a bakery and sandwich shop, and loved every bit of it.
Used to love Baby Moons. Of course, our camera operator and I used to, last day of school, come and get a milkshake. But you only did one thing that broke my heart, was when you took the car front away from the counter. That was so cool to have it, the grill of the car up there.
I made that car front end, and of course that was the hot dog and burger days, but we needed a display case for the bakery. And I hated it too, because it's like I loved the look of that, and I had a lot of time in it, but the product had to sell.
Had to sell the product. Well, we're going to circle back to that and to your store and being a private business owner in a second. But what first drew you to law enforcement, where you spent most of your career?
It's crazy. As a kid, I grew up in Hilldale, and my parents still live in the same home that they bought when we came back. And it's funny, even as a kid, I was playing the cop on my bicycle. Tons of kids around the same age. You know, a lot of us grew up there together. And I'd be the traffic cop pulling them over on a bicycle and issuing a ticket and everything. But anyway, it has to come back to, I have two uncles that served in law enforcement. And I think that, you know, even at that young age, that was the influence there. So I'm sure that played a major role with having family in it.
Well, now, after working so long in the public sector, how did being a private business owner downtown open your eyes to the other side of government and the regulations imposed on the community?
It was an eye-opener. You know, you think you understand something like, you know, the private sector just from the outside, you know, looking in. But having worked in both local and state government through my career with different departments, and I think many times those that have a career in government don't realize the risk and the chances that the private sector takes. Right. And what I mean by that is the initial investment to start a business, the chance that, hey, maybe you're going to make, you know, money, maybe you're not. And when you take on employees, you know, at one time we had 8 employees at Baby Moons, and we were blessed to do well. But it opens your eyes that each day, you know, you've got to make something work, and you've got to adjust and everything else. Where the government side, if it's snowing real bad and government shuts down, you still get paid as an employee. You know, your vacation and stuff. So it's like the paycheck's guaranteed. Right. But owning a business, not only are you looking at your finances, but you're looking at, you've got to make payroll. You're dealing with things that are out of control with price increases or whatever may happen you know, along the way. So definitely a different world, private sector versus public as far as every day.
And I'm
Day-to-day
sure
operations.
that's helped your perspective on the council as well in terms
believe
of
it.
dealing with multiple issues.
Yes.
Changing gears a little bit, what are some of the, and not to go too long about this, but what are some of the biggest challenges facing Luray right now?
I think Luray's at a point of somewhat of like a crossroads. I think we're looking at big changes to happen. And being here my whole life, I've never felt it more than I feel right now.
Okay.
It's not just me. I hear this from many other people that Luray's about to change. It has changed always through the years, but it's been so gradual. The questionnaire that you had put out earlier that I'd responded to, the census data, for many years, Luray stayed pretty constant. Actually backed up a few numbers here and there from one census to another. But we're at the point now, we're seeing the growth, we're seeing the new people coming to town, all of that. So those are good things, but they're also growing pains. And as I mentioned in the previous commentary or questions, that as we would all like to see new businesses and more homes, affordable homes, all that, there has to be an infrastructure in place to support it. And our wastewater treatment plant, it's handling where we're at now just fine. There's a little bit room for expansion, but not a whole lot. And when we have big rain events, or even some issues that we have now with I&I, infiltration and inflow, that's water going into the system that shouldn't be there. Those are major concerns. Those were concerns 4 years ago when I ran. That was what that was my platform before, was infrastructure.
Well, let me ask you this. I interrupt you right there. I came to Luray first in 2020.
Okay.
And around 2006, I felt some things changing. That's when we first got the triathlon. That's when we first started getting some of these other events, bluegrass festivals, things. If you go back and trace them, some of those things started kind of around that time.
Yes.
So ever since then, I have been saying, Luray's on the verge of a growth spurt. Luray is on the crossroads of something really happening. Why is now different than then?
I think the big difference now is go back to 2020, 2000. The internet, social media, all of this that now, the businesses that were in Luray, the caverns and all of it, the days of the brochure and the paper that had to go out and stuff, you reached people, but what it is now, compared to that with the internet and people seeking us out, I think COVID made a big change when people didn't have to go into the office and could work from home. And as one local person who we all love, Bill Dudley, I know made the comment a few years back that we've been found. And I believe we have. And not just Northern Virginia, but even other states. It's so easy to sit in the comfort of your home and look at real estate and look at the beautiful pictures and everything and say, hey, this looks good, this looks nice, and people are coming. And I know that also from talking with customers as far as those tourists that we talk to on a regular basis at Baby Moons, because if it was someone we didn't know, we'd always ask, hey, are you a local? We wouldn't say, are you a tourist? We'd always say, are you a local?
Right.
And we'd get into those conversations, and people are just loving it and wanting to move here.
Well, I agree with you. I think COVID was a catalyst. I think when you look at what it's done to home prices since 2020, what's happened in the last few years, I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say it was like an 84% increase in 4 or 5 years in home prices here.
Yes.
It's been amazing, and I do think we've turned a corner, and finally what I've been expecting to happen for like 15, 20 years is, I think, getting ready to happen.
It's on the doorstep. Yes, I agree.
Let's see here. Let's talk about housing a little bit. Short-term rentals is a big thing right now. Matter of fact, coming up in September, you all are going to have a public hearing, I believe, on the 14th. I don't know if that's the correct date. Maybe the 9th. I can't remember. One of the two. But in September, coming up in a few weeks, you've got a public hearing coming up about changes to the ordinance dealing with short-term rentals. There's obviously pros and cons. You take an old property that's been run down for years and fix it up, you're going to get better tax property value out of it, which means more taxes. If they're renting it, you're going to get more in TOT funds.
Right.
But on the other side, we're breaking up traditional neighborhoods. We are changing the housing market in terms of the inventory of what's available for long-term rental and all. What are your thoughts on where we're at in short-term rentals?
When when it first came about, and the first started, and I can remember two of them in particular, especially on Luray Avenue, houses that were in disrepair. One of them was where my mom grew up. She was actually born in that house and lived there until she was married. So two houses that I know through my lifetime I had seen occupied some, but then would be vacant for months or years at a time. And those two short-term rentals were approved early on in the process, and the people that that bought those put the money in, fixed them up. They're still operating as short-term rentals today. True success story, all the way around. But as this gained momentum and started to take off, just like with Luray Landing, and investors just getting into it, as far as not someone that maybe even lives close or even lives in the same state,
Right.
out of Virginia,
Right.
buying these properties for just the investment. And it's not the perfect fit everywhere. I think when we first started it, we thought it would, hoping it would take off, but not to the point of where we're at now. And the concerns are there of, whoa, we've got to get off the gas and maybe start putting on the brake. As far as none of us, I believe, on council were anticipating the sudden rush we've had over the last 6 months to a year. And
Yeah, a lot of requests
that's-
coming in a
yes.
short period of time.
yes, so we've got to have a plan.
How do you think and we'll change gears again, how do you think the relationship between the town and the county can be improved? This is not a new issue, although there was a recent heated issue over the visitor center, but this is something that's decades going back, that at different times there's been friction. How can that be smoothed out a little bit?
I know I've heard it said before, and I agree that communication is one of the biggest issues. Let me first say I won't say our relationship's horrible, and where I'm going with that is there has been several times that I picked up the phone and talked with a Board of Supervisor member, one-on-one. There's time I've talked with the county administrator, and it's always been an open conversation, a friendly conversation, and listening to both sides and stuff. So reaching out like that is possible, and but sometimes I think we get wrapped up in just looking at what we're doing as a town, just as they may get wrapped up in looking at what they're doing in the county, and sometimes things fall through the cracks, and we need to know a little better what's going on. There have been in the past some scheduled meetings where like one council member and one Board of Supervisor member will be present, with town managers or whatnot, and I've attended those before. I was at one at Stanley Fire Hall and went very well. There was even some business owners there. But the other thing that's a challenge that I think a lot of people don't realize is that anytime there's more than two council members or more than two Board of Supervisors members, if it's more than that, it's actually considered a meeting. And at that point, you get into, it has to be advertised, it has to be public, it has to be that. So I think the public might think that, hey, 3 or 4 supervisors and 3 or 4 council people could meet for breakfast and all to, be able to talk more or understand more. And that would be nice, but some of the challenges are it becomes a meeting on the legal side of things
Right.
that sort of keeps us divided in a sense as far as meeting as a group.
In the Q&A that you mentioned earlier, published last week on PVN, you stated that you would like to change, the question was, what is one thing you would like to change? And you wanted to see upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant to handle incoming growth. And you mentioned that a little bit earlier in our
Yes.
conversation. So I'm going to flip that question around and say, what's the one key thing that Luray is doing right or doing well that they need to make sure that they maintain or keep doing?
Okay. I think Luray is doing a great job as far as marketing Luray. If you look at what is being done both through Parks and Recs and the town office itself, I mean, people are coming here, the events, all of that, it's working. We look at the numbers, with events such as the concerts, we look at the 4th of July celebration stuff, numbers are here, But comes back to, that's going right, but on the flip side, we've got to make sure that everything's in place to support it and welcome, and that it can continue to grow, that it doesn't have to get to a point that we've got to back off or say, well, we can't handle the,
Right.
the crowd of the event. But
Right.
so I think that's right. And the other thing I think, I'm going with a second one here, but from the ARPA funds that came in, a very large portion of that was put into infrastructure planning and improvements, many of them that have already been done. A lot of it is still to be done. There's a lot of stuff that, and people don't see it, it's underground, both water lines and sewer lines, that these things fail. And I know I've mentioned before in open session, and people see it, I've always hated to see us pave a section of town, a certain street, maybe 5 or 6 blocks long, it's brand new asphalt, and within 30 months, within 30 days, or 2 months, where they're cutting the asphalt and digging down to replace a water line that broke, and some of that's a result of the vibrations and stuff with paving. So I've always hated to see tearing up something new to replace something old that's below it. So
got to do it sometimes.
So we've got to have the plans to get that. And this is something that doesn't get fixed in a year or 5 years or 10 years. This is a never-ending process, but needs to be plans on major sections and getting that done.
How would you describe the town of Luray to someone who has no idea about anything about it, never been here, never heard of it? How would you describe it to them?
Oh, wow. It's actually hard to do, I think. It's, there's so much about this town. From the mountains, our close proximity to the river, our close proximity to Skyline Drive, obviously the caverns, and the beauty that's above ground, the beauty that's below ground. But that is something that cannot be bought. We are blessed that that is part of this town, and really part of the whole Page Valley area. It's just gorgeous. But the people here, the friendly atmosphere, and we would hear that time and time again from tourists that would come into our restaurant, that they're like, wow, we can't believe how friendly everybody is. People on the street smile and they talk to you, and it's just, we take it for granted, but I guess many other people, and especially large cities and stuff, you tend to think of it there, but I'm sure it's possibly other places that people just don't smile or talk. They pass on the street and they don't even look at each other, and you know, it's totally different here, and most people like it. So,
not a bad place to be, is it?
No, not bad.
Not a bad place at all.
Bad.
I've lived in a few, and not a bad place to be. Now we're going to finish up kind of like in our final segment here. We're going to play a quick game called the 5 W's. I'm going to ask you 5 simple questions about the who, what, when, where, and why. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I knew you were. I knew it. All right, who? Who do you look to, past or present, local, state, or national, as a public figure that you would like to emulate? Now, this does not have to be a politician. It could be anyone in any walk of life, but a public figure, somebody that everybody would generally know, that you would like to emulate.
I tell you, for me personally, it's never really been the national type figure or world-known figure or whatever. I think the people that have influenced me the most in my life are people that I've known both in this community and around me. I think back of the Lloyd and Katina Wakemans that had Brookside Restaurant that were so involved with community and giving back and things like that. I think of Bob Drumheller. McDonald's opened when I was in high school, and that's when it was on East Main Street, where Rancho is, and just how what I saw as a teenager going in there after every game, every sporting event or whatever, and always being welcome, and the students, we'd feel it. But the way he treated us, and then even later in life, both with the fire department and other organizations I've been with, to see all that he gave back to this community. Dr. Jim Holsinger, who was a local doctor from the time he was here before I was born, and was my doctor all the way through my teens into early adulthood, and just people like that I've just mentioned, that they could have been a success anywhere.
Right.
It wasn't this town that made them a success. They could have been the same or maybe even better, at another location. But they chose this town. They chose to serve. They gave so much back. And I think those are the type of people that I've seen through my life, and many more I could continue to name. That's just good people. And
what is the most important duty of a town councilman?
I think the most important duty is to, as you make decisions on council, which is primarily, of course, budget decisions. So you're talking about taxpayer money and code decisions that have to do with town ordinance and code that affect people. But making that decision on, and making that choice as far as how are you best representing the majority? any of us on council could have one or two individuals come up, to us and be adamant about a certain issue. I'm not saying that they wouldn't be correct in their idea, but it might be a lot different than what the majority may think. So, and with that means you have to listen. So it's listening to the people. You're going to hear all types of ideas on whatever particular topic it is, but trying to make that decision on what is best for the town and what fits the best, or the majority of the people as far as fitting their opinion.
When, and we're looking for a moment, a memory, or an observation that you've made, when were you most proud to be a resident of Luray?
There's been a lot of them. I know some other candidates that you've interviewed talked about when tragedy or something happens, how this community comes together. There's no doubt about that. I've been here through Fran, Isabel, with the wildfires. This community will unite. There's no doubt about that. But one particular incident for me personally that I would have never even thought of was when I was going through the FBI National Academy in 2006, and they're at Quantico, there for months and in the dorm with your roommates and everything. Anyway, it was this time of the year, Labor Day was coming up, and I was there with people from all over this country, even from other countries. And I posted, we had a 5-day break, 4 or 5 day break, and I posted some things around there at the academy on a trip. Would anybody be interested in coming to Luray? And I wound up putting together a canoe trip and the dinner on the river, Shenandoah Outfitters, tour of the caverns. There was a cookout back at our place when we lived on North Court Street. So anyway, all these things, and I thought might get a couple people together. Yeah. There was a large group, 30 plus of the members that came. Could not believe this place. Did the caverns, did the Skyline Drive. And it was set up, they had time to do some stuff on their own.
Sure.
But when we went back, and I got back to the academy after that weekend break, could not believe the people that were talking about how glad they were to have come and could not believe this place, Luray in Page County. And that was something that, it was just unique to feel that, and from, like I say, from people from all over the world. And those people making those comments about Little Luray. So we are blessed.
That is very cool. That's interesting. Where, besides your home, is your favorite place to go in Luray?
Once again, there's lots of them with the Greenway, the pond up by the Singing Tower. We've got beautiful areas, Lake Airhead and all, but there's something for me, there's something special about In-Lawn Park. And I think it's because my parents would take my sister and I there when we were little. So I played there as a child, much bigger sliding board and all the dangerous equipment of the time, I guess you could say. But not just that, as I grew older, and the Bluemont Concert Series used to be there before we ever had Ruffner's Plaza. None of that existed yet, but so there were concerts there. And then after my son Ryan was born, my wife Penny and I would take him there. So he's playing in that same area. And then on top of all of it, being the history buff, I can only imagine what that was like when the Luray Inn sat on top of that hill.
I still can't imagine.
And many people don't realize that In-Lawn Park was actually the circle that was down in front of the inn. Yeah. And the horse and buggy days then, as people would come in on the train, that's how you went up to the inn. Yeah. And just a gorgeous place. From the pictures that I've seen.
I still have trouble looking at the pictures and imagining that building there. It looks huge.
It's incredible. It was huge. And it reminds me of Hotel Roanoke, sort of a Tudor style. And but anyway, it's a shame we lost that to a fire. But gorgeous hotel. But there's something there for me and anyone else who loves history as you sit there and enjoy the beauty that's even there today. But to think who came through there and what the actions were and what they thought of this and that grand hotel on the hill, it would have been something to see.
Not to linger on that, but I could swear, and I may be wrong about this, but I could swear Mr. Menifee, Bill Menifee, told me that there used to be a small pond somewhere between there and the tracks, because the tracks were already there, of course, and the hotel was on the hill, but somewhere there was some kind of a pond where it was big enough to have little paddle boats out on.
Really?
I can't imagine where that would have been.
I had heard there was a town fountain That
Okay.
was, but I think that was back towards the post office, which of course wasn't there
Yeah,
at that time.
yeah.
But that there was a town fountain. But I hadn't heard anything about the pond or whatever. I'll
I'm
do some digging.
I'm almost sure one night at our little nickel dime quarter poker games we used to have, he told me about that one time. But we'll move on. We'll move on. And this is our final question here. You've been very gracious with your time today and your beautiful home that you've remodeled here on Linden. And we're going to ask you the why. This is the wrap up here. And here's your last pitch. And you may want to direct it to talk to the folks out there and tell them why they should cast a ballot for Jason Pettit for Luray Town Council.
All right, thank you. I would just like to say I'm grateful for having the last 4 years to serve. Done my best. Hope I've pleased many of you. And as we go forward, I just think that with this upcoming election in November, I feel I've learned a great deal being on council. I think there is a learning curve to anyone that comes onto that it takes a while to really get adjusted and figure that out. But I do think that with my background, knowing how government works and having worked with large budgets, things like that with different positions that I've had through the years, and also being that small business owner that realizes how government decisions affect that small business. And I think that's key because we do make decisions with council, obviously, that affect not only tax rates, but regulations and stuff that affect business. And we've got to be cautious that we're always making the best decision or at the best of our ability to make the right decisions to help bring more business here, take care of what we have here as well. But I feel that with that background, that's a big plus, and hope it carries me through.
Well, Jason Pettit, thanks so much for being with us here today.
Thank you,
And, regardless of how the election comes out, I want to thank you for everything you've done for the town and everything, again, regardless of how the election comes out, how much you will continue to do, because I know you will continue to do things for the town of Luray.
Thanks so much.
We also want to say thanks to Eleanor Arrington for all of her work behind the camera today and in the editing room. And if you enjoyed today's show, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Go to Page Valley News on YouTube, our YouTube channel, and subscribe there, and share the video with a friend as well. Help them get informed about this upcoming fall's election. And finally, make sure you visit all of our furry friends down at the Page County Animal Shelter and help them find a forever home. Until next week, this is Randy Arrington saying, enjoy that Page Valley living.